Hey YouTube! So I've finally got round to doing this guitar. This is an old one for me, and first things first, yes, it is real snakeskin. I bought a python on eBay, not an alive python, an old python. You're not allowed to deal in animal products or python skins, but this one had a date on it of written on black pen on the back of it, 1940 something. So the actual python, I don't know how old the python was. It was massive. It was about this wide and about 4 meters long or something like that. So I did a few things. I did a P bass. I did this guitar. I did the Softtech amp. I did a speaker cabinet for the amp, which I don't have anymore. Made some straps. I don't know. It seemed like a funny idea at the time. Yeah. So I've varnished over it. But it is proper textured, proper python skin. Did the headstock as well. So probably going to end up talking about this guitar a bit more than actually playing it. But this is it kind of still is, an Ibanez Destroyer from 1985, a DT-350, often called the Star Destroyer for obvious reasons. A normal Ibanez Destroyer doesn't have this extra cutaway. It's more, a Gibson Explorer shape. The original Ibanez Destroyer is kind of pretty much, it's just a copy of a Gibson one, apart from this horn. See how it's not rounded, it's kind of flat on the bottom and then curved on the top. It's like that. So the reason this is called a Star Destroyer, that was why I called that the Super Star Destroyer. If you're a Star Wars geek like me, you'll know what that is. So basically, as you can see, I drew around this guitar when I was making that one. That's what it was based on. Because it's got a good way when you sit down, you can kind of, it sits between your legs like that, which is how that was designed to work. I bought this a long time ago. This was sort of one of the first guitars I ever did serious butchery to. I bought it in 2000. It says, I think I wrote in the back of it, 2009. I think I said DT-350. August 2009. I did this. So I bought this. I was on a stag weekend in Newcastle. And I think it was either just before I left or just before I came back, I bid on this, and I hadn't really looked. It was on eBay, and I hadn't quite looked at the picture properly. I didn't really realise what I was getting in for. It had already been stripped, so it was no paint on the headstock, and it looked like someone had painted it with what looked like ink, black ink. So it was sort of sanded it. It looked absolutely hideous. It was so hideous, I never actually noticed that it was the star-shaped one, this extra bit cut out the bottom. And when I got it, I think I paid quite a lot for it. I think I ended up paying him 80 quid or something. And I think the guy who sold it to me felt guilty about it. Because, I bought it and the bridge was missing. And there was a hole here where it should have had, I think it wasn't a Floyd Rose, it was like an Ibanez Pro Rocker that would have been in it. But it was all ripped out, so there wasn't actually places really to put the posts for it. As I said, the guy I think felt guilty about that, so about a week later he said, I found the bridge for it, and he sent me an Ibanez bridge, very similar to what's in this, an Edge 1 bridge, which I was going to make it a hardtail anyway. By this point I realised that the bridge wouldn't fit, so it wasn't the original bridge, but it was a replacement bridge, and I think I got pretty much all my money back for that bridge, because I didn't know at the time. I just put on, it's an Ibanez, and I ended up getting about 80 quid for it, so I ended up kind of getting the guitar free, so I'm not complaining about that. So I said there was a big hole here, and I took it into Jimmy Moon's, who's a famous luthier in Glasgow, who I believe just retired last year. He was down in the Pollokshaw, just opposite Queen's Park in Glasgow. He made Bryan Adams' acoustic and Steve Earle's favourite mandolin, because there's a poster when you walk in the door of Steve Earle going, Jimmy Moon, make my favourite mandolin. Copperhead Road. So I took it in. I was like, he sort of looked at me. It was the first time it was the first time I'd ever met him. It was the first time I'd ever met him, and I walked in and he was like, kind of looked at me, and I was like, right. I dumped it on the desk, on the counter in front of him, and said, what can I do with this? And he went, well, and then just before he could say anything, I said, apart from put it in the bin. And then he said, well, I was actually going to say you could put it in the fire. So we're already sort of having a bit of a laugh. But what we did basically was he gave me a piece of wood, a piece of mahogany, which was an offcut from one of his neck, from one of the guitars he was building, to basically block the whole thing. So I sanded that piece of wood until it fitted absolutely perfectly in there, glued it in. I might have even screwed it in as well, so it's solid, and then put a Tunematic bridge style on it. This is apparently, I bought it off eBay as a Cosmo Black Ibanez hardware set, so I got the bridge, the stop tail, and the two knobs from that. So that's where they came from. These are the original V5 pickups, which are very similar to what I'm not even sure, it might be exactly the same pickup as what I put in my Aria Pro. I think they're made by Maxon. These have got the two adjustment screws on them. They're original. This is a pickup I made because I wanted an HSH guitar because I'd never had one back in 10 years ago or 11 years ago. It's got the original smooth tuners. I made that string retainer bar out of a piece of metal, that's why it's rusty. I put snakeskin over the headstock and varnished it, and then stuck an Ibanez sticker on there and then varnished over it. This guitar wouldn't have had that sort of modern Ibanez logo. That's what you get in sort of more modern RG and stuff like that. Yeah, the frets were absolutely goosed. So at the time I stoned them, and I remember spending one night, I had to spend the night in Dunoon because me and my dad were doing up a house, and we put a conservatory on it, and one night we had to knock down a wall to put the conservatory on, but we couldn't do it in one, so one of us had to stay overnight in a pure spooky house with a wall missing. So I did that, and that night I sat with a file and got all the frets levelled, watching old school TV. I even remember that because you could only get like 3 channels, and it was like pure mad having to watch, you know, normal TV. So having no internet or anything like that. I'm sure it would be now, but you know what I mean. And no DVDs, no videos, no records, so it was kind of really bizarre watching. I think it was the last night I ever watched console telly, you know, like what I used to do when everyone did when we were wee. Yeah, so I've levelled all the frets. This has been scalloped, which I didn't do. It was already scalloped. It's a sort of, I don't know what they call this kind of scalloping. I think it's obviously someone's done it themselves. So it's like scalloped on the bottom and then not scalloped under the fat E string. So if you know what I mean, and it starts sort of it's not scalloped up until you get to the 5th fret. So it's from the 5th fret up, and it's kind of only, it starts off like quite a deep scallop under the high E, and then by the time you get to the A and the fat E, it's not scalloped at all. I'm almost getting there with the talky bit before I even start playing the thing. Yeah, so I stuck a real Python on it, varnished it. I took this guitar, once I'd done that, to see Dragon Force in the ABC in Glasgow, who were supported by a band called Sabaton. And after, the thing I liked about ABC in Glasgow, which is now closed, was actually I think I had to go myself because none of my pals would go. I think I'm sure I went to that gig on my own. And the good thing with the ABC was it didn't have a back door, so the bands had to come out the front door to get to the tour bus to go home. So what you do is after the gig, you went out, I got a kebab, and then I stood outside and had a kebab, and then met Dragon Force and Sabaton, and they signed this guitar. Unfortunately, I had 2 pens in my pocket, a black one and a blue one, and the black one, the writing stayed, and the blue one, it reacted with the varnish of some description. So although you can still sort of see some signatures, you can't see all of them. So it's really, I have to take my word for it. I got it signed for, I hung about outside eating my kebab, talking to Sam Topman for, I don't know, half an hour, something like that. He was a bit of a dick. He was completely plastered. He was drinking beers on stage. I think they were falling out with their singing at that point. So, and I think he maybe thought I was one of the support band or road crew. That's why he was talking to me. But anyway, so I got it. This has been signed by Sam Topman and Herman Lee, and the keyboard player, I can't remember his name, and the singer and the drummer. I never met the bass player. I don't know what he did. And in Sabaton, I never met the singer, but I talked to the rest of them, and either the bass player or the guitarist, one of the blonde guys, I can't remember, learned to play on one of these, or he said he had one after, but his first guitar was this shape, but it wasn't an Ibanez, it was a copy, and then his second guitar was an Ibanez Destroyer, but it wasn't the one with the extra cutaway. So there's some trivia for you. But the thing, the reason it was quite cool, it was Dragon Force and Sabaton is my Baby Metal, my favourite band. That's why there's posters up everywhere. I've got to see them in a couple of weeks. Dragon Force played on the first song on their last album, and the singer from Sabaton, unfortunately the one I didn't meet, is on Baby Metal's new album, so it's kind of like sort of Baby Metal link with this guitar, even though it was long before Baby Metal were going. 2009. I think they might have started in 2010, but we're around about that time. Yeah, so yesterday I dug this out and had to. The pickup switch was goosed. I tried to do a video, but the pickup switch was goosed. And although I'd levelled the frets, I didn't really know what crowning them was. So they were sort of like, you know, bars. They were totally flat, which still sounded alright, but it just had a bit of a sort of whereas now they're properly crowned and it's playing quite well. I just said I added this middle pickup, which I believe I bought as an Ibanez pickup, but I just bought it basically because it's got the rail on it and it matched these. Got a volume control for the. So it's the two humbuckers into this switch, into the volume control. This switch here, there's two switches here, which is before I realised that you can't really put two switches that close together. It's too fidgety. So the bottom one is another three-way switch, which is kind of like this one, apart from it chooses the middle pickup, or the humbucker, or in the middle it chooses all three pickups, and it's got a separate volume control for the middle pickup. And then the other switch, I can't remember what I originally had it as, but just now it's a kill switch. So I will be doing something with that. I probably are just have a volume and a tone, and then a switch to maybe just turn on the middle one. I don't know if it's not the sort of guitar you want single coil sounds on. You know, it's like it's a shred machine, and it sounds that way. So I think that's me done. 11 minutes, 12 minutes of talking pish, and now I'll make some noise with it. So this will be playing Rat Pedal, Laney, Trace Elliott. As soon as it's in there, here's the single coil middle pickup on its own. I've got it set up with ridiculously low action for shredding. I also put 9s on it because because I had a box of 9s, a packet of 9s, and so the scalloping, for anyone's wondering, it doesn't make you play faster, but it does mean, see, when you're bending strings, instead of sort of pushing from the top, it means you can get right in below the string, so you can actually get a much better grip in the string for bending, so you can do ridiculous bends. But obviously it's going to knock it out of tune, so I'm going to have to tune that string, because doing a 5-note bend is obviously not going to... No guitar can survive that, especially not new strings. a bit ridiculous vibrato with the scallops. I don't know how much of it's actually what this guitar actually plays or sounds like. It does have a really thin neck on it. Not like a wizard. It's kind of like a... Oh, what was the other shape? The one that's on the S series. Ultra. Starts with a U, I'm sure it is. It's got quite a thin sort of Stratty type neck. It's been stripped, unfortunately. This was an amazing... If you look... See just below where the snakeskin stops and the fingerboard starts, it was a sort of amazing candy apple red at some point. This guitar, oh, it might not be this exact one. There's another one. This is a 350. The 250 has got like chamfered edges. This has got like a top binding. It's got chamfered edges, but you could get it with a red fingerboard, like it was all cherry red. So I will like to try and get one of them at some point. Because it would have the Floyd as well, so that would give me, or the the Pro Rocker, which would give me an excuse. But yeah, so interesting guitar. Wasn't bought for my early 80s vintage Japanese guitar collection, but does totally fit in there. I bought this because I wanted an Explorer. I didn't want to pay for an Explorer. I quite fancied this Ibanez heavy metal type thing, which is obviously covered in real snakeskin was the way to go. I need to look at my Schecter P-Bass. Yeah, I did that to like a 1980, I can't remember, 1983 original made in America or Van Nuys Schecter made in Chandler's. I put a snakeskin top on it, but I never actually got into varnishing it, so it's still sort of raw snakeskin. The varnish idea was a great idea. I still need to get round to actually doing that and actually do a video of that bass. I don't think that bass has been seen on YouTube yet. It was a P-Bass, but it was so incredibly damaged in the top. I had to either paint it or cover it in snakeskin. I went for the cover it in snakeskin option. I'll look at that bass and get onto it. I reckon I've seen that bass on Top of the Pops. I don't mean that model, I mean that exact bass. But I can never remember the name of the band. Their hits, they're sort of one hit wonder from they weren't from Glasgow. They're from either Dunfermline or Dumfries. There's not Aztec Camera. It started with A. Oh, I can't remember. Whatever it is, but I reckon that this, because the Schecter basses were all sort of pretty much handmade one-offs, and it's exactly the one I've got. I'm sure the guy's got, and I would explain how I managed to buy it in Victor Morris in Glasgow in an incredibly poor state, that this thing had been heavily toured. So don't knock scalloping. I know Yingwi likes it, nobody likes Yingwi, but I need to have a wee look at the electrics in this. It seems to be a bit overly buzzy. This was before it was really that mad into wiring and before it really had that much success. I was still able to wire a guitar, but when I was trying to do fancy stuff, I didn't really think about it well enough. Having the two three-way switches isn't the best idea. I would rather have something else in there. Would also rather have a volume and a tone, I think, even though I never really used tone controls, but it'd be nice to have something a bit more useful. I think one of the reasons I left the two switches in is just because there's two holes. But I wonder if I could maybe put a kill switch in there. Might be quite good. But then how would I turn on the middle pickup? I'm thinking out loud. But there's something not quite right with the shielding on it. Seems to be a bit noisier than normal. I mean, that is obviously if I turn off the rat pedal, there's nothing. So it just seems to be a little bit noisy. So if anyone's ever wanting to sell an Ibanez Destroyer that's not as goosed as this one, I might be interested in it. But amazing stage guitar. It kind of actually, you're sitting there thinking my favourite guitar just now is this, and it's like I wonder if that's maybe something to do with it. You know, it's a sort of not 100 miles away shape, and obviously with that out as well. So I mean, it's got some history for me. It's not one I can ever sell. Partly because I'll never get any money for it because no one would buy it. But so there we go. Python Lee Destroyer. Rock and roll.